promised, here is John Lennon, and a little bit later on in the program we'll talk about the possibility of his having to leave the United States, and at that time his attorney, Mr. Leon Wilds, will join us to make certain that John or I make no mistakes in the legalities. But I welcome you here, and I'm glad that you're here. As I said at the outset, back in 1964, after the cataclysmic arrival of the Beatles here in the United States and the great popularity you had on the Ed Sullivan program and others, there were many people who did not really understand what you were doing, and they thought then that your hair was long and that you looked modish, you know, and you were revolutionary. Does it surprise you at all that it took so many of us such a long time to get into your act and to realize what you were doing?
No, it was mainly parents, and they were against rock and roll, you know. Anyway, before the Beatles came along, I mean, people have been trying to stamp out rock and roll since it started.
Why do you think that is? What are they afraid of?
I always thought it was because it came from black music, and the words had a lot of double entendre in the early days. And it was sort of, you know, the white kids, our white, nice wasps are going to go crazy with all this, moving their bodies. You know, and the music got to your body, and the Beatles just carried it a bit further, made it a little more white even than Elvis did, because we were English, you know.
That people couldn't hear your music, that all they heard was themselves screaming.
It got a little boring. I mean, it was great when it first happened. When you'd come on, there'd just be nothing but wah, you know. But then we just became like lip-syncing, you know, miming. And sometimes things would break down and nobody would know. And so it wasn't doing the music any good. It was like being in the eye of a hurricane, and so there was never a time when you thought, what's going on? And that was about as deep as it got. What is happening? Or what, you know, you'd suddenly wake up in the middle of a concert or a happening, and think, what, how did I get here, you know? The last thing I remember was playing music in a club, and the next minute this. But we never thought about it too much, because it was an ongoing thing. It was happening to us, and it was hard to see, you know. We were just in the middle, being ushered from room to room. We were the first working class singers that stayed working class and pronounced it. Didn't try and change our accents, which in England were looked down upon, probably still are.
And then I could assume that when you say that going on the stage to perform music is one of the best ways of making contact, that what you're saying is it's one of the best ways of making sexual contact.
Well, yes, we're not looking to have a card game, that's what it is. You know? I mean, in the very early days when we were playing dance halls, there were just a certain type, which you call groupies now, which would be available for functions at the end of the night. And in general, most kids would just go home with their boyfriend or whatever, you know. And there was always a small group that just went for any performer. They didn't care whether it was a comedian or a man who ate glass, you know, as if it was on stage.
Right, the guy who swept up after the elephants. Hey, where are you going?
Right. And actually, the people that work for rock groups usually get more action than the actual rock group, right?
Don't say right to me, because I
Well,
don't know.
you can imagine it, Tom. They audition.
Right.
They get the cream of the crop, you know. If you want to see Elvis, you got to see me first.
You said earlier that it became boring to stay with that group. Why is what you're doing now not boring when that was?
Because I can change musicians whenever I like. And it tends to get into a format, you know. Because we were together much longer than the public knew us. You know, it wasn't just from '64. I was 24 in '64, and I've been playing with Paul since I was 15. And he's very nice. And George about a year later or something. So it's a long time we spent together in all the most extraordinary circumstances, from, you know, lousy rooms to great rooms. And so it wasn't just the public just think, oh, you were only together 5 years, we've only got 5 million records, you know. But we were together a long, long time.
I know that in about 1988 there's going to be a group come out that is going to pick right back to the sound that you guys had in the since you're 15 years old, and all kinds of critics and all kinds of writers are going to say, wow, look at this, we've got this whole new sound that's reminiscent of the Beatles back in the 60s.
Well, they'll probably be playing Grutschblobs and Zakdungas, right? You know, they'll have new instruments, and although rock and roll was brand new when it came out and excited everybody, it was sort of, it had roots in blues and jazz, so in that way they would have their roots in the 60s, 70s, and possibly further back. But you can't say that rock and roll is like the 20s music, although if you look for it, you can find out where it came from.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find out where Beatles music came from, or any music came from. It's just like it has its history.
You've been involved in some other mini controversies, like the time that you were on the cover of the album without any clothes on, and like the time that you and Yoko had everybody or invited people to come into the bedroom while you were there.
We held a bed in for peace,
A bed in for peace, exactly. Why do you do those things? And I don't ask you that because I want to engender some flip response from you, but what does that gain for you as John Lennon, or what does it gain for the cause of peace in the case of the bed-in for you to do something like that?
Yoko and I, when we got together, decided that whatever we did was going to be in the papers, you know, whether it's Richard or Liz or so-and-so gets married or whatever people like us do is going to be in the papers. So we decided to utilize the space we would occupy anyway by getting married with a commercial for peace, and also a theatrical event. And the theatrical event we came up with, which utilized the least energy with the maximum effect, was to work from bed. And what we virtually had was a 7-day press conference in bed, where the press fought. The first day they fought at the door to get in, thinking there was something, you know, sexy going on. And then they
licentious.
found, that was the word I was looking for. And they found two people talking about peace, and we were just promoting peace, like you promote any product. You know, they promote war, join the Marines, join this. We were promoting peace. The Naked album cover was less general than that, meaning we didn't have. That was one of the first things we did. We thought, you know, we felt like two virgins. That's what the album was called, because we were in love, just met, and we were trying to make something. And we thought to show everything. People are always looking at people like me, trying to see some secret, or what do they do? What do they do? You know, do they go to the bathroom? Do they eat?
Do you?
I do, quite a lot. You know, and we just said here, you know, and that was in 1968, and all hell broke loose. But now they're jumping around naked all over the place, right?
Yes, they are, as a matter of fact.
Right. So we were just sort of ahead of our time.
Sorry.
Yeah, but you see, having gone through the Beatlemania thing, nowadays it's nothing like that. I mean, I can walk down the street and somebody just say, "Oh, hi, John," and they usually say, "How's your immigration?" You know, if it's in New York, right? And they don't hassle me. I might sign one autograph, 2 autographs, you know, and I don't get hassled. And I went through that period where I actually couldn't go anywhere. And so now it's like heaven. I can go and eat. We go and eat. We go to the movies. We go wherever we want. If there's an announcement, like there's an opening and everybody's going to be there, you get a lot of noise and cameras and flashbulbs. But if we just decide to go to dinner, it's cool, you know. No, I mean, I can get around now, you know. I'm glad too. I don't miss it. I'm glad it happened, but I don't miss it.
Yeah,
like
in spite of the boredom, in spite of the fact that maybe there were little dissensions, those were good times for you.
Oh, huh? Yeah. I mean, the boredom was in the music. I mean, that came after all the Beatlemania.
Did you save your money?
What we could get our hands on, yeah.
What do you mean, what you could get your hands on?
Well, a lot of it got siphoned off before we even got near it, you know. I mean, we didn't know anything about business or anything like that, you know. And there's a lot of money. There's a lot of millionaires around this world, so, yeah. But that's part of the action, too.
When musical groups become successful, or musicians, or really when anybody in the public eye becomes successful, immediately there are rumors about their personal lives, and I suppose the fact that some people are caught in the possession of certain unlawful substances like marijuana or cocaine or LSD or speed. A lot of people say that's all they do. They smoke a lot of grass, they eat a lot of LSD, they're all acid heads, and they're all all rocked out. How much of it is there going on in truth?
I wouldn't know, you know. I mean, what do I know?
Come on, John. Come on.
I know as much as you.
Come on.
In
well,
truth, how much of it goes on where? You know, it depends.
Well, in your little coterie of friends.
My friends are as clean as a whistle.
I'm sure they are, as a hound's tooth, in the words of General Eisenhower. But
I'd say there was as much dope in the music business as there is in virtually any other business now. The dope is so out in the open that you can go anywhere and it's there. So there's no sort of underground movement of people taking dope, you know. the most extraordinary straight people are taking dope, including cocaine. It's available anywhere at any time, and it's all over the place. If you want it, you can have it, you know.
And it's no more predominant or prevalent in your industry than it is in insurance, in retailing, and in selling tires. Is that what you're saying?
I think you'll find a lot of middle-class people in their mid-30s who grew up in the 60s have marijuana and now cocaine around like you'd have a glass of wine. You know, I'm not saying it's good, you know, and cocaine's not too good for you at all, you know, but I'm saying that it's there, and a lot of perfectly, quotes, ordinary people use it.
What are they afraid of you doing if you have permanent residence here?
I don't know. I think when it was started, somebody didn't want me here, and now they probably don't mind, you know. It's just that it's a bureaucratic thing. It's gone on, and how do we stop it? You know, maybe whoever makes the decision doesn't know whether it'd be either politically right or what's going to happen if we suddenly stop now when we started it. I mean, it's very sort of embarrassing for everyone, I guess. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that half the people that started it are now having their own problems, right? So I don't know where I am. I know there's a different lot of people in charge of my case now, and I'm sure they're not as hot to get me out because they didn't even have the Republican convention in San Diego, and I was not committed to go there either. Mm-hmm. So
I have less than 1 minute left. You know, you've been a very low-key and very mild-mannered guest on this program, and yet I've heard you described as being an egomaniac, and I'm having a little trouble understanding that description of you vis-a-vis the way that you've really been during this hour we spent together. Why would you be called that?
Because one gets a reputation, you know, for one thing or other, whether it's true or false. If being an egomaniac means I believe in what I do and my art or my music, in that respect, you can call me that, you know, and I believe in what I do, and I'll say it, you know. And otherwise, this is pretty much me, you know, apart from being on TV, you know.
Well, you're one of the nicest egomaniacs I've ever met.
Well, so are you, Tom.